Welcome back to the Fantasy Formula, and if you can believe it, we're almost a quarter of the way through the season. Zach, you and I are neck and neck in the Global League, and this week we have a big decision ahead of us.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't believe how actually close we are considering the different strategies we've tried to play at the minute. We are actually standing on equal points, equal ranks. It's incredible. But yeah, there's a lot to talk about. Potential limitless play. Do you get rid of Gasly because of the DNF? Plenty to talk about.
And to help us prepare for Miami, we're joined by the lead commentator for Formula 2 and Formula 3, and you can catch him this weekend as one of the voices of F1 Academy. It's our friend Chris McCarthy. Chris, it's great to have you back on.
Thanks, Adam. Yeah, it's really great to be back on. Having a great season so far. As you said, I'm going to be doing some F1 Academy this weekend for Miami, which really looking forward to being a part of that championship throughout the year. Saudi Arabia was brilliant, and being part of the Miami weekend, I think, is just going to be a real fun thing. But yeah, doing the fantasy league on the side as well. It helps being in the studio when you can be sat there and watching all the practice sessions before you make that decision on who you're going to pick.
And if you're watching the ticker at the bottom of your screen here, you'll notice that Chris is actually up on Zach and I. So we might be asking you for advice throughout the course of the show today.
Yeah, no, I don't quite know how that happened, to be fair. I was on the side of people that were, Oscar Piastri is going to do this. I did say Lando Norris in preseason testing, but I couldn't quite afford him, so I went for Oscar, and I'm now firmly sticking with him as lead driver. And Kimi Antonelli is just someone I guess I've almost climbed through the ranks with. I think he's such a great, talented driver, and I'm certain we're going to see him at some point on the podium on a regular basis. So, yeah, for me, he's someone that's definitely worth having in there at some point in the team.
Chris, you've got this great history of coming up with all of these drivers through the junior series. This year, you're balancing F2, F3, F1 Academy. What's it like to prepare for up to 3 series of races that you could call in a given weekend?
Yeah, it takes a lot of preparation. I actually spent a lot of throughout the winter. I didn't really do much in terms of commentary work in January or February, actually, but I dedicated, I'd say, up to around 6 weeks preparing to take on Formula 2, Formula 3, F1 Academy, as you mentioned. We got the Porsche Super Cup, which will be starting, FRECA, and then I'm also going to be doing the 24-hour Le Mans. So I was even doing a bit of preparation for that, despite the fact that we didn't quite know the entry list yet for the 24-hour Le Mans. So yeah, I put in a good, I'd say around 6 weeks of preparation to make sure that I had a system where I could easily update things as once we get into what is now the very busy part. We've got a triple header coming up. So I really enjoy that part of the job, actually, doing preparation. And I know some people might see it as something that would be unenjoyable, but I really do. Trying to find the storylines of each drivers and the stuff that the fans maybe wouldn't, watching from home maybe wouldn't quite know. So yeah, that's one of my favorite parts of the job, actually, is trying to tell everyone's stories. But yeah, when you've got about 70 drivers to do it for, it takes just a little bit of time to do it.
Well, you make it look seamless week in and week out, and particularly in Formula 2, we're having one of the most interesting years in recent memory. It seems like there's a new winner each and every race, with Richard Verschoor and Arvid Lindblad taking home wins last weekend in Jeddah. What's it been like commentating such an up and down season in that division?
Yeah, it's been really unpredictable. I think when the entry list was announced in full, there was no real standout drivers from the grid. People were looking towards Gabriele Mini as a possible favourite, given his form in F3 last year and how well he did in preseason testing, actually. But he hasn't even got on the podium yet, so that tells you how unpredictable it is, and maybe how much do we even read into that testing. But yeah, commentating it, you turn up every week and you have no idea who's going to be in the top 10. For people who don't watch Formula 2, it's a reverse grid format for the sprint race on Saturday, so they reverse the top 10 positions, lower scoring race, and then the feature races as they qualify, and that's a sort of GP style points. So it's all about being in the top 10 and qualifying. 22 drivers, and at Bahrain, I think we had 3/10 between 7th and 17th. So yeah, it's almost a lottery style, and you've got to be in the right place at the right time and get a banker lap in, don't get any track limits, and if you qualify in the top 10 on a consistent basis, then you've got a chance to win the championship. And that's what Richard Verschoor's been doing so far this season.
So now, heading into talking about Fantasy for Miami, the big question on most people's minds is everything about chips, and it is that big one of Limitless this weekend. Now, we had a lot of people using Limitless in Jeddah, and that actually worked out quite well. But if you are waiting to use the Limitless chip, coming into the second sprint race, this would be the perfect time to use it. Of course, we get to see the sprint quali results, which helps us a lot more than a normal race weekend to pick out our teams. And also, there's quite a lot of budget building that can be done over in Miami. So I have to ask you, Chris, have you used any chips yet, or are you planning to use any in Miami?
You know what? I actually haven't used any chips yet. Last year, I liked being in the F1 Live League. I liked having them held back and waiting for the end of the season. But then quickly, when I came on this podcast, I learned that you have to use them on the right weekends. So it is a sprint race weekend. This might be the time to install the first chip of the season. Right now, it's hard to say. McLaren do have quite a clear advantage, and they've got some really good form going. They've got a driver in red hot form in Oscar Piastri. They won there last year, so I'm tempted to say go for that before the rest of the teams catch up.
That's exactly where my head's at too, Chris. Right now the top 5 drivers are pretty settled with Lando, Oscar, Max, Charles, and George. This is a low DNF circuit, so I don't think there's a whole lot of risk with those drivers going around the track and having any big issues happening. And as we look ahead to some of these upcoming races, I think we could see that top 5 shake up a little bit. I'm thinking about when we move to the European part of the calendar and that first wave of upgrades comes in. What race do you think big upgrade package will start to disrupt the running order?
They tend to come in European races, so we should probably see them coming in. I'd say usually it's the Spanish Grand Prix is one where we start to see them coming in to be really tested. We have Monaco, just looking at the calendar, Monaco the week before, possibly Imola. I guess that's the start of the triple header, but it was Spain famously, wasn't it? Was the Grand Prix where we hit Europe and all the packages started coming. So it could be as early as Imola. That begins our European leg of the season. I don't know if the teams have everything they need to get upgrade packages over to Miami in time. So I think Imola and that triple header could be quite an interesting one, but we're not going to see those in action, I don't think, around the streets of Monaco, Imola, and particularly Barcelona. It's quite a high-speed circuit, real high-speed corners. Car is really put through its paces there. Imola's a bit more tight and twisty in areas. So, I think they're the tracks where we really start to see the cars develop and who's going to be catching up McLaren, if you like. And I'll be interested to see how Ferrari respond to that, and particularly Red Bull, because they're probably the team in most need of a big upgrade package at the moment. So that's the one I'm really excited for. It's probably the most intriguing part of this season to see a 4-time world champion struggling for the first time in many years.
One of the changes coming up in the European leg of the calendar that I'm keeping an eye on is the new technical directive on Flexi-wing testing. McLaren have certainly been the biggest benefactors since Flexi-wings were first noted the middle of last season. So maybe they'll just be fast regardless of what happens. But I'm definitely keeping an eye on whether or not this new rule could impact McLaren and knock them back into the clutches of a Verstappen or Ferrari.
Yeah, absolutely. There could be some changes there in terms of that. They've done really good stuff with their cars this year, and Oscar Piastri's in particular has just managed to work with it really well. Lando Norris is just struggling. I think for the first time is in a car with a teammate that can be challenging him for wins, which I don't think he's ever quite had before in his career. You look all the way back through his junior career, but yeah, I mean, you mentioned about their upgrade packages. I think it'll be most interesting to see how Red Bull and Ferrari get on, because Max is still managing to challenge them with a car that's not quite performing too well. So when they eventually start to upgrade his car slightly, that's going to be a very pivotal point of this season, I think. And then can Lewis as well? Can he start getting his head around the Ferrari car? And if they can improve that, where does that leave him? So. Yeah, and we haven't even mentioned Mercedes. I mean, they're doing really well. I think George Russell's been the one of the star performers of the season so far. And Kimi Antonelli, his home race is Imola, and he's never won there in his career. So he came very close in Freca, but that's his hometown. So if he's to get on the podium there, it will be some show. I can tell you that.
And so with all of these potential changes coming up in the next few races, I really like Limitless in Miami because the top 5 drivers are so secure. For me, unless we see something really crazy in free practice or spring qualifying, or if we have any crazy weather this weekend, for now, I'm looking forward to using one of those.
I'm still very much on board as well, purely as well that we're getting to the point of the season where we will start seeing in the next 2 to 4 races, people bringing in those 2 A-tier driver and 2 tier A constructors, which means the later you leave that Limitless, the less it's going to be useful. And that sort of does also come into effect with the wildcard, because you can also wildcard this weekend because so many midfield drivers are on track for that 0.6 million or at least 0.2 million. But with so many changes coming up in the next few races, potentially, it is also quite a nice chip to still have if you haven't used it already, just in case we do get a surprise and maybe McLaren are not the fastest car come Spain, come Monaco, just to keep in the bank for basically a rainy day.
Now, Chris, I wanna walk you through our tier list for this year. And so we have all of the tier A and tier B drivers into a buy and sell category. So we show
Wow.
our listeners which assets are moving up or down week to week. I want to start
Okay.
with a guy that was on your team, someone you just talked about a moment ago in Kimi Antonelli, because he had been
Yes.
a buy for us for several weeks. We moved him to the sell just for this weekend for a few reasons. One is that he needs 42 points to gain 0.3 million, so the biggest cost cap gain possible, and that's a bit of a stretch for someone where he is on the grid. And then also on a sprint weekend, you're going to want the best possible constructors because you're going to get a lot of points. So typically, if you're running Antonelli and Piastri like you are, you have to have a Racing Bulls or Haas second constructor. I think that gap to Mercedes and Ferrari as a second constructor could be more pronounced this week. So Antonelli moves a little bit for us, but we do like him on the whole for the season.
That's an interesting choice. So, yeah, because he's been solid for me all season, Kimi Antonelli, just because he's famously in his career throughout the junior career, even he's always known for his consistency, never crashes the car or anything. Although when I first commentated on him, I said all this, and then he crashed at Monza on his first lap, so that did make me look very clever.
The commentator's curse.
I know. I did a whole VT on him as well, saying how much of a superstar he was going to be. Did a whole build up, and then he went and put it in the wall. So thanks, Kimi. No, but I think that's quite an interesting choice. So would it be a swap for Kimi and George Russell? Is that something I'd be able to get away with, or?
That's one way you could do it, is that George
Yeah.
will get you slightly more points and then closer to that cost cap gain. Or you could downgrade Kimi to one of those midfield drivers, someone in tier B, that'll get you
Right.
a little bit more cost cap. Then you take that extra money and put into a second big constructor. Because you have McLaren today. Maybe you run it with Mercedes, where you'll get a lot more points than Racing Bulls that you have now.
Yeah.
So you still balance out those points, but you're going to get a little bit more cost cap too.
Yeah. I'm tempted to put a Williams driver in, given how well they're going. Like Carlos Sainz is doing very well, isn't he? So, and he's almost putting himself as like what Fernando Alonso was that season. Was it when he first joined Aston, when he was just doing so well? So him or Pierre Gasly could be an interesting shout as well. But I see he's in your sell list, but the buy list, yeah, Fernando, that could be a good shout. Or Ollie Behrman, actually. I tell you what, that I like that I see he's in your buy list. That could be really. I haven't included him in my team yet, and I need to find a way to do so, I think.
Well,
Yeah.
with the way F1 Fantasy's working this season, it's actually just quite a crazy way they've got it. So the issue with Carlos Sainz is I don't think me and Adam actually have an issue with how many points he could get, but Carlos Sainz would need around 34 points to increase in budget maximum
Right.
because of the DNF he had in Bahrain. And then similar with Gasly, because of his DNF in Jeddah, he's kind of screwed for the next couple of races. So there's like this whole like poisonous assets now in F1 Fantasy that you can't really touch whenever they've had a DNF.
Yeah.
So that's why you'll see them
Right.
in like sell options.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Chris, while we're talking about Williams, they had this double points finish at Jeddah. They're off to their
Yeah.
best start since 2016. Do you see this Williams team as the real deal, this big improvement we've seen since 2024, or do you think they're going to tail off as those European upgrades start to settle in?
I mean, there could be a natural. I think they are taking advantage of other people's mistakes in a way, but and they are just they're naturally being there. You know, they're challenging the likes of Hamilton, who is still getting spirits with his car, and they're taking advantage of a slower second Red Bull driver who in Yuki Tsunoda, who's still finding his feet with that. So yeah, I think they are picking up points. Where others are losing out. But yeah, we talked about this in preseason testing, and we looked back through all the Williams driver lineups and went back to 2016 and went, I think it was when Felipe Massa was in their team, and went that this is their best lineup since that 2016 team, and it's proving to be because they already scored a load of points, and they're making really good gains. And Alex Albon, it's no longer that he's the only driver that can go and score points in that car. He's being somewhat outperformed now by Carlos Sainz in some ways. It's a nice head-to-head going on there. So you can just see how naturally they're pushing each other along, and I think that will make them even better going forwards. They've probably got their eye on 2026 in terms of moving higher up, but I think we'll see them continuing to be there in the top 10, absolutely.
And Chris, you went through a bunch of these rookie drivers. A lot of them are in our buy list because they could gain some extra value this week. You
Okay.
have some special history with a lot of these drivers. Who's impressed you the most so far, given the package that they've been given by their teams?
Good question. I'd say Isack Hadjar has been the most impressive for me, because he was. I'll say honestly, the way he lost the Formula 2 title last year, I didn't know what that was going to do for his confidence. I mean, he was there on the grid, and it was pretty much a race to the line between him and Bortoleto, and then the car never got moving. And he went from the pit lane in the end. So that was something really hard for him to take, and I'd never quite seen him like that in his interviews afterwards. I didn't know how he was going to come back from that. And coming into the Racing Bulls team, it's quite a daunting prospect when you become part of that Red Bull setup. And then when he had the spin at Australia, I thought, oh no, like, is this a sign of that confidence that he may have lost? But no, he's come back really, really strong, and has been talked about a lot. He's got himself in the public eye a lot. He's gained a lot of fans, and he's outperforming Liam Lawson, who is suffering from damaged confidence, I think. And he was really challenging Yuki Tsunoda as well. So I think they've got a really good driver there who they can work with long term, and he's going to put pressure on Yuki Tsunoda, I think, going forwards, and keep himself in contention for a promotion. So yeah, for me overall, it's got to be Isack Hadjar.
Yeah, with all the noise between Red Bull and Racing Bulls this year, he's just been quietly consistent and putting in some good performances both on track and in F1 Fantasy. One of the biggest cost cap gainers on the grid this season. And Zach and I have had him in our team for the last several weeks. We love him.
Yeah, it's great. And the pressure's on him as well now, and Liam Lawson, because Arvid Lindblad became the youngest Formula 2 winner at Saudi Arabia, and he is Red Bull backed. He got a record equaling amount of wins in Formula 3. Christian Horner, after he got the double at Silverstone, was already talking about the possibility of him getting to F1 one day. So the pressure's on them both. I think Isack maybe knows that, and he can deal with pressure really well. So it'll be quite interesting to see how they both deal with this. Now, Arvid is well off away and running in Formula 2, and did that at a track he'd never been to before. Yeah, they've got to perform. It's almost going to be a battle, I think, between those two to keep their seat, as it always is in Red Bull.
So now in front of you, as you can see, there are like 6 big B-tier drivers that we really want to talk about. And I'll start with the Haas boys, because Behrman, wow, has he impressed so far this season. And points-wise, he looks brilliant. And I sort of say it as the magic, the Haas magic in F1 Fantasy. They always look somehow, especially in like Bahrain, like they're not going to do anything, and then they completely destroy all expectations I had of them on that weekend and blow it out of the park on points wise. So for all of the B tier drivers, I think for anyone who has the chance to score big points in Miami, it would be those two of Behrman and Ocon. And they also look good on budget increases. I believe Behrman needs around 8 points to get 0.6 million, and Ocon needs around 12, 13, I believe. And then, of course, we have Isack Hadjar. Budget building potential, really low on the costs for his asset. He's around 5.7 million, which is the third least expensive asset in the game. And for how many points he's getting you and how much increases in budget he's getting you, absolute bargain right there. And then, of course, Bortoleto can't go down in price at the minute. And he's not actually looking bad on potential. He only needs around 6 points for 0.2 million increase this weekend. And, you know, if there's a couple of DNFs there and thereabouts, he could get that 10-point threshold. And then, of course, we have my Alonso versus Lawson battle. 6.2 million to 6.6 million in budget. They really are very equal on who can go up and where. Now, my money's on having Fernando Alonso above Liam Lawson just for the experience, making sure there's no crashes, and yeah, just Fernando Alonso for the level-headed, you know he's going to score you some big points. However, Lawson, if you want to go for a little bit of a differential, who still looks like you can get budget from them, I would go there.
And Zach, just going back to a point you made earlier about the Haas drivers, they're both in the top 10 for fantasy scoring on the season, so very impressive. In the case of Ollie Behrman, he leads all drivers in overtakes. That's a big category in this game. And this is 1 year after Kevin Magnussen led all drivers in overtakes, so clearly something that the Haas boys are good at picking up. And Ocon has 3 straight top 10 finishes in Miami, so it looks like he has a good history at this circuit too. So I'd love to bring in Esteban Ocon, get that 0.6 million, and then keep Behrman in our lineups for another 0.6 million for him too. Chris, for you, what are some of the midfield drivers you're looking at this circuit? Do you plan to change up some of your lineup or roll with some of the guys that you've had the last few weeks?
I'm absolutely looking to change it up. And I think what you just said there about Esteban Ocon sounds like a really good shout, actually. I mean, Ollie Behrman is in good form, but Miami's going to be a new place for him. So he's not raced there before. Gabriel Bortoleto, Isack Hadjar. I don't know if Lawson raced there either. So there might be some drivers there who are in similar situations. But yeah, Esteban Ocon, Alonso is sadly in a car that's just, yeah, they're just ticking off race by race right now and looking towards next year. But Esteban Ocon, yeah, that's a really good shout. I mean, he got them that 5th place at China, which was a really good result for him and the team. And he's, again, this is a nice, similar to the Williams lineup, the Haas battle is really good of a driver using his experience, and then Ollie coming in kind of fresh from F2, showing that the pace that he had there. So I think he'd be a really good shout, actually. And you mentioned his previous form there. I think he can definitely do it, and he probably needs to bounce back a little bit because Ollie, the last race was doing well, and there's in the head-to-heads he probably just needs to get back ahead again. Yeah, I'd go Esteban Ocon in that one.
I'm looking forward to seeing what you pick this week, Chris.
Yeah,
And
yeah, absolutely.
For those of you that are considering Limitless, you're worried that maybe you won't get some of the cost cap boosting benefits of the drivers you see here. Don't panic. Remember, we're going to get higher scores this week from the sprint weekend. That's going to carry into the 3-race average for Imola and then later for Monaco. So focus on Limitless for points this week if you'd like, and then those cost capped opportunities will be presented in the following races. I think you'll be fine either way. Now, Chris, the next thing I want to show you is how dominant Ferrari have been this season in the pits. So 4 out of the first 5 races of the season, Ferrari have the fastest pit stop, and they actually had the fastest pit stop with Hamilton in China, and it was vacated due to those disqualifications. And in F1 Fantasy, this is so important. They're now on 3 straight races with 15 points just from pit stops because they're nailing these 2 to 2.2 second window stops. And to me, it's almost like they're this year's Red Bull, where you don't necessarily have to have the fastest car, just one driver in contention for a podium, like you have with Charles Leclerc, and then banking these pit stop points, and you could be a top fantasy constructor too. So I think we're going to see a lot of teams start gravitating toward Ferrari, especially as a number 2 constructor to McLaren on Limitless builds this week, but also as some of these teams that are moving away from Mercedes on the meta lineup, moving to something potentially new, as Ferrari also looks to dial in their floor. Let me ask you, what would it take for Ferrari to take this next step from being on the fringe of podiums to Charles Leclerc getting P3 last time out at Jeddah to really contending for race wins?
I mean, first of all, that's a great slide you got there. I didn't actually know that this area of points existed. So, wow, that's really cool. And Red Bull was famously the most the quickest. So it's good to see how the field has kind of leveled itself out. But in terms of Ferrari making that next step, yeah, I'd say it's just getting that extra bit of performance to the car. They've Charles Leclerc has been kind of on the cusp of doing that for a number of years now, and he hasn't quite been able to make that next step over the line in terms of leading a championship fight like we're seeing Oscar Piastri do this year and really taking advantage. It's quite clear with Lewis that he's struggling with that car, but Charles Leclerc is doing really well in it. So yeah, I think they just need to find that extra little bit of performance, and their decision making as well has not always been the best, and I don't know if that's been completely cleared up at times. They just seem to struggle slightly on the pit wall from time to time. So it's when they get into those big moments, they think that might be even harder for them now with a 7-time world champion and someone looking to get his first. So they just need to get that. The harmony isn't quite there with them and Lewis either yet. So I think that's something they got to try and work on. But yeah, it's just an extra bit of performance for them so they can deliver week on week. They're just sort of playing second, third best at the moment.
Zach, let me ask you, you've been running Mercedes for the last several weeks. Mercedes obviously much higher than Ferrari in the constructor standings right now. Is pit stop data alone and the promise of contending for podiums enough to make that shift for you, or do we need to see more out of Ferrari?
Right now, I think yes. Honestly, I was quite shocked at how bad some of the pit stops have been this season. Just because coming into this season with the new points of 2 to 2.2 seconds, I thought we were going to be getting a lot more teams week in, week out, like Ferrari have been doing, getting those big points from pit stops. But it really hasn't been the case. And if it keeps going this way, that 15 points Ferrari keep getting each weekend is probably around 20-ish% of their points they're getting each weekend. And that is such a big difference. Like I mentioned this before, get rid of Ferrari's pit stop points and get rid of Mercedes pit stop points. And I believe there's only around a 5 points difference in Jeddah. But then with the pit stops added, it was something like 15, 16 points difference between them, which is huge when picking your second constructor. So yeah, going into Miami, if you are, I mean, even for Limitless, I think Ferrari's my second favorite to McLaren. We'll see, obviously, what sprint qualifying has to say. But yeah, 100%, I think Ferrari's there for the fantasy talks right now.
So guys, let's bring it all together and talk about what this means for lineup choices this week. And of course, the first one is going to be a potential Limitless build. In talking about Ferrari and their pit stop potential, we love them as the second constructor this week, and then just sticking with those top 5 drivers that we've been going with for the last few weeks. Looking at the sports books and the betting lines for Miami, these 5 are head and shoulders above the rest of the field. So I think this is the last really safe week for this lineup. I like it so far. What do you two think?
Yeah, I think that's it. This is a good time to do this, 100%. Just because we do go into each race pretty much knowing that these are going to be the 5 that are challenging. So yeah, I think this is a good time to do it. Lewis is still getting his head around the Ferrari car. Kimi is still getting up to speed at Mercedes. Yuki's, of course, still doing the same at Red Bull. So those 3 are going to be the lead drivers of that team. And yeah, it's then who you pick at McLaren. Lando, is his form going to continue on, or can he bounce back at the track where he got his first win? So yeah, That's going to be the ultimate choice, and probably one I wouldn't make until just before qualifying, to be honest.
100% this choice is not being made until after sprint quali and for the deadline. And then, of course, we'll see what's happening with Verstappen, Leclerc, Russell, because we could have a weekend where Hamilton does just bring it out, and then maybe we don't have a Russell, or maybe one of them does qualify really low down in sprint quali, and that means in F1 fantasy terms, we actually want them in our team so they can get all of those overtake points. So now we move on to our first normal no chips team used, and as you can tell, it's still on the Piastri McLaren Mercedes meta. Now, with a team like this, unless you have a big budget, you're probably still going to be sticking with Mercedes, because Ferrari's still around 3-ish million more, so a lot of people won't have that sort of budget. However, double Haas magic, like I've mentioned, plus budget building potential. And this team basically has all 4 of the best B tier drivers that could go up in Miami. And then, of course, we've got Piastri, because at the minute, Norris still is a little bit too expensive, considering Piastri and Norris, very similar points in F1 fantasy terms. So I don't think Norris is justified enough in a normal team still to not go for a Piastri. There is a few things you could change with the B tier drivers, like if you don't have enough money for Ocon, you could bring it down to an Alonso or a Bortoleto. Same goes for Behrman, but if you've got that 109.3 million, my money would be to go for this team.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think this is a great lineup where all 7 assets could increase in value this week. Zach's provided a couple of alternatives where you can just step it down a little bit with less cost cap risk, but then it's basically good for any budget all the way down to 102, 103 million. So really great, solid option for Miami.
Wow. That is really good. That's a really good option. That's basically, if I were just to put in Ocon, that could be my team for Miami. And now I've seen that, I don't know which way to go. It's Limitless or that, basically. So it could be Ocon in for Kimi, but then Mercedes. So you swap both. And so it's the fun of F1 fantasy. I never know which way to go. There's always 2 very good options, and that is one of them. So
they've done a great job of designing the game this year and making the prices so that there isn't one set lineup that we all have to follow. There's been so much variability this year. Zach and I have had some of the craziest live shows of people coming to us with all different angles of their teams each week.
Yeah.
So it's made for a lot of fun. Chris, talk us through what we have dubbed the McCarthy special.
Right. Okay. So yeah, this was something I mostly constructed before the season. Oscar Piastri. It was a case of price, to be honest, why I went for him over Lando, because going into the season I talked maybe this could be Lando's year, but Oscar I went for because I wanted Kimi Antonelli next to him at the top there. So I went for him for the 2 times, just because I felt McLaren would be leading the way. And then Kimi Antonelli, that's purely based off my knowledge of him from the other series in F2 and Freca. He's incredibly consistent, stays out of trouble, and I felt that was going to be the case straight from the off in Mercedes. So I put them both in right at the start of the season. The other 3 I have experimented with slightly. So I did put in McLaren to go with Oscar, and then Racing Bulls, and Isack Hadjar was someone that I wanted to put in to back that up, along with Liam Lawson, who I put in. I can't remember who it was for now, but I swapped him in when he got demoted from Red Bull, just because I felt he'd actually do better. And it was a nice switch for him. And then Bortoleto, I changed for Nico Hulkenberg. I don't know if that was the right call. Nico's done a little bit, because Nico did better after that. So, but I felt Bortoleto had more, was doing better at the time. So I swapped them 2 round essentially. So yeah, that was the decision process of how I got to this
Chris,
point.
This team, it's way ahead of its time. We didn't realize some of the benefits of having Piastri, McLaren, and a good B-tier constructor for several weeks, and it looks like it's something you figured out straight away. And also with Zach and I, we had Piastri in Australia. He had that one incident on the grass, and then we overreacted and then shifted everything to Lando, whereas if you just had the patience to stick with Piastri, you probably would have come out net better than us. So really great team all the way through for you. And I also just want to double click on a point that Zach made earlier, just in case you hadn't heard. With Bortoleto, he's at the price floor of the game.
Right.
So the worst possible things could happen to him. And certainly he'll lose points for you, but he's not going to lose any more price. So he's a very safe asset in
Right.
that regard.
Yeah. I mean, again, he's someone I've known from, winning those championships in F2 and F3, and I do think it will come for him. I think he overall will challenge Nico Hülkenberg. So, but I swapped him in, and I think that was a slightly a price thing as well so I could afford Liam Lawson, if I can remember. But it's something I do with my dad. So this is very much a McCarthy special, because it's not my team, it's me and my dad's team. And when we make the long trip down to F1 to the studios, which takes us around an hour and a half, this is part of our journey, I guess, and can be quite a long part of it, is discussing who we're going to put in for that round. And sometimes there are phone calls just before quali to decide. But this was a large part of it was, right, let's go for Oscar, and let's go for Kimi. And it was that was the decision.
You told us last season that your dad had a hand in helping you pick your fantasy teams. I'm so glad he's still the team principal of the McCarthy special.
Oh,
Good
yeah,
to hear.
he is. Yeah, he is. Yeah, very much he makes the executive decisions, not me. So I've been given messages just before races like, change that, and we change it. So we're not against each other at all. It's a combined effort, that's for sure. And he always does ask me how the team's getting on. So yeah. So it's good to see.
I was
we're
wondering
doing
as well, talking about the Bortoleto to Hülkenberg swap, any chance, do you remember when you did that? Because that might be a big swap if you did it before the Bahrain DSQ for Hülkenberg.
Good shout. I think it was. Yeah, it was a couple of races ago. So yeah.
That was actually a really good play.
Yeah, it probably was then. At the time, I just felt, let's. I needed to swap some. It would have been Bahrain, because I was in that weekend. I just hadn't updated it after the first couple, so I wanted to make some changes. So and I was speaking with Sam Collins, who is great to chat to, and is big into his F1 fantasy as well. So and I think he helped me make the decision. So big thanks to Sam.
Zach, one of the biggest complaints we've gotten in recent weeks is that we propose a bunch of teams that some of our viewers can't afford. Could you walk us through just this budget-friendly option that really anybody can use?
Yeah, so of course, this is one of the big things about F1 Fantasy. Going through the whole season, you get people starting late, some people going budget building later on. So at the minute, we have teams from 100 million all the way to 113 million on budget. So there's a big gap. But for anyone who does want to play a Piastri McLaren Mercedes team, because realistically, I would say, looking at budget thinking, you would still want to go for a Piastri McLaren Haas. However, this weekend slightly different because of the sprint race weekend, more points on offer. I don't think that extra 0.3 million in budget is worth dropping to Haas from the likes of Mercedes. And realistically, it's just keeping the Piastri McLaren Mercedes just with the 4 cheapest B tier assets in the game. And you're quite lucky at the minute, because this works budget-wise, bar Jack Doohan, and that's why he has the little bubble next to him. So, yeah, for 100.8 million, you could still go for a Piastri McLaren Mercedes team. Now, realistically, I would replace Doohan. If you could only afford Lawson, go up to Lawson. If you can afford that big jump off to Behrman, I'd highly recommend doing that. But yeah, that is the team, and realistically, it gets good budget and good points for a great sprint race.
Chris, I've got to ask you, we have this bubble on Jack Doohan, and some of the noise has calmed down about him getting replaced by Franco Colapinto this season, but
Yeah.
I'm sure that threat still looms over him. How do you see this playing out over the course of the season?
Yeah, it's a tough one for him. Jack Doohan, he had the pressure put on him before he'd even walked in for his first press conference, to be honest, which was a really tough one for him to take. Or he'd obviously only done that one race at the end of last season. And there has obviously naturally just been some teething problems for him at the start of the season. So I think he finds himself in a little bit of a difficult position. Franco Colapinto is someone who raised his stake as a driver massively with the performances he put in last season so quickly, and he's got huge support. He made history for Argentina in F2, so Yeah, naturally he's such a good talented driver, and that Alpine have got 4 drivers they can go to in him or Paul Aron straight away. So it's the pressure is on him, and every time he goes out, you just want him to see him improve. But I just hope they give him, the season, to see what he can do. I hope it's not a case that we get a few races in and we hear the news that he's not going to be part of the setup anymore. So, yeah, I think someone like Jack Doohan needs a full season to really settle into that car and find his feet with it. He's not done any races really last year, so it's tough. But you can hear the noise in the background of it mounting, and when he made that mistake at Japan, you just thought, oh no, like this is just going to be more heat on his shoulders now. And I do fear for him that he could be making an early exit, to be honest, but I hope that that's not the case. I hope he gets a full season.
And Red Bull already have the award for hastiest move of 2025 with the Lawson and Yuki switch. So
Yeah.
hopefully it takes a little bit of pressure off him and he can just be himself for these next few races. But I do think the end is coming for him eventually, but especially before we get to Brazil, more of the North American races after Miami. I think that would be a good time to introduce them if they were going to swip mid-season.
Yeah, there are, you got the summer break and stuff like that, and if they want to do a swap, then naturally. But the Alpine are not having a good season. When you look at the grand scheme of things, they're right down the end of the constructors, so they need to, they're not there to make up the numbers. They want to be right fighting for podium. So, and Pierre Gasly might feel he's on his own with that, but this is what happens when you bring a rookie driver in. They just need some time to get up to speed. So. Yeah, I think the expectation on rookie drivers now is almost way too high, and that's because the level in Formula 2 is so high. But I think there just needs to be there needs to be time for these drivers to get up to speed. So I hope Jack Doohan's given that.
Agreed. I hope we see some more grace for these rookie drivers in the future too.
Yeah. But some of them come in and they're good straight away. So there you go. It's one of those things.
And we've been touting Ferrari throughout the show, so if you want to get a piece of Ferrari but aren't ready for the Limitless Chip yet, this is a good option for you. Just a balance of getting a piece of Piastri and McLaren, bringing in Ferrari, but then having some cheaper assets to allow you to afford the team that could also gain in value this week too. So I think this could be a good alternative to the meta for those non-limitless groups this week. So let's talk about the Fan Amp picks from Jeddah. And Zach, you and I tied in another area of our life, 497 points for both of us, just edging out Terry, who has the advantage of us over an F1 Fantasy. So it looks like it's all evening out for us a bit. Remember, you can play along with us on the Fan Amp app each and every week, and one lucky winner is going to win a prize from our sponsor, Fifth Gear Garms. And so congratulations to Janine, who won that prize in Jeddah. It's really exciting for her. Now, Chris, I want to get you in on some of the action for this week in Miami as well. Could you help us predict the podium in Miami?
Oh, okay. Absolutely. I feel I have to be quite bold in this now. Okay, I'm going to go for... I do kind of want to say Lando Norris here.
Oh.
I just feel... I don't know, that might be a strange choice, but I feel that he could come back this weekend. I feel he could come back. He needs to as well. He's had a chance to reset, and I think he'll come back this weekend, and he will take the victory. So I'm going to go Lando. I'm writing this down. I'm going to go Lando Norris to take the win and get his season back on track. And I think the McLarens will be split by Max Verstappen. I think he'll get second, and I think Oscar Piastri will be third.
Zach, anything from you?
I like that podium, and honestly, it could so easily happen. I mean, Norris, I do see it, because obviously he had his first race win there last season. It would be a great way to bounce back, of course. A triple header, I can completely understand how if you lose your momentum at the middle point, it is quite hard to get back into the swing of things. So this 2-week break would be really good just to get back into that mindset of just winning. And I think I agree on that first place. And Verstappen being in the midst, I like that. He's got the potential to do it and is making the championship so good at the minute with him just constantly being there. And if that prediction was right, wow, everyone would close up to Piastri. The championship would probably be back to within less than 10 points within each other, potentially.
For me, just to be interesting, I'm going to invert the McLaren driver. So I think Oscar is going to stay red hot and take this win. Max Verstappen's history at Miami is flawless, so I think he's going to be quite good in this race. And then Lando still having a good result, but still trying to come to grips with winning a race this month. So I'm going to switch the McLarens around, but all still good news for our Limitless lineups. Now let's talk about the F1 Fantasy Featured League for the Fantasy Formula, and we have a new leader. So Charlie ran a perfect Limitless lineup in Jeddah and scored 341 points. Chris, I have it on good authority. You're in our featured league too, right?
I am. I don't know whereabouts I am, but I'm in there. So yes, I did join at the start of the season. So that's something that I will be keeping a close eye on now as I go through to see how I get on.
We've already called out the ability to play against Zach and Terry and myself in this league. Now you can play against Chris too, so be sure to sign up for the Fantasy Formulas Featured League today. We're up over 60,000 teams in this league, and we're so excited about it. Now, Chris, this weekend you debuted a very special event, bringing back a really wonderful charity event that you started in 2024. Could you tell us a little bit about what you unveiled and what it means for us in 2025?
Yes, over the weekend at Silverstone, we have launched our Purple Sectors 2 event for 2025, which is really exciting. We did the charity event last year with young epilepsy called Selling Purple Sectors. It was sort of the first time that we did it. The aim of the event was to raise money and awareness for the charity, but also raise awareness for neurodivergent people in the sport. So obviously you can't have a racing career if you're still suffering of epilepsy, but you can work in this sport, which is what I'm doing and what many other people are able to do. So that was the whole point of the event. We did a 2-hour sim race at Milton Keynes and raised £18,000. We had some great people there. Isack Hadjar was there, which was really cool. Flew in from Paris to do the race, and Christian Mansell and Zach O'Sullivan. It was a really good event, but we want to do even bigger and better this year. Raise more money, so we have launched Purple Sectors 2. The event's gonna come back this year. We haven't quite announced the date and location yet, but that will be announced soon. And alongside myself doing the event this year and really driving it forward, almost, I guess, being the faces of the event is going to be Jenny Gao, who is the BBC's presenter for Formula One, and Neil Cole as well, who is a commentator, presenter in motorsport, has been for a number of years, and you would have seen him hosting the FIA Awards at the end of last year as well. So they both have their own connection to epilepsy in different ways, and they showed an interest in the event last year, and through that, the three of us, we believe as a team, can drive the event forward and make it even bigger and better than it was last year. And already I can tell you we're seeing the benefits of that. So yeah, that's going to be the event. As Silverstone, we took 6 young people to the circuit and launched the event, but those 6 young people are going to be working on our event this year, and we're going to train them up throughout the year and give them an opportunity to be part of a live broadcast working on the event. So yeah, that's going to be something that we want to do. We plan to give not only some people opportunities to race against professional racing drivers in a safe space, but work with a professional crew as well, and hopefully go on to have a chance to work in the industry.
This is such a fantastic event. We're always happy to support, and we contributed a few things to the event last year. I know Terry, he joined and he was part of the racing teams.
Yeah.
And so we're really excited for this event to come back this year. As soon as all those details are available, we'll be sure to share it with all of you watching today. And Chris, we wish you the very best of luck with Purple Sectors 2.
Thank you very much for your support. Really appreciate it. And yeah, we look forward to having you guys back again.
That's our show for today. We'll be back this Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. BST for our live show ahead of the sprint race for the Miami Grand Prix. You can catch Chris this weekend as the voice of F1 Academy on Friday and all season long on Formula 2 and Formula 3. Chris, thanks so much for coming back. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It's been really great fun. Absolutely loved it. Can't wait to call the rest of the season. If you want any update on the charity event too, we've got our own social media page, Setting Purple Sectors. So go and have a look at that. But yeah, thanks so much for having me. And I'm going to be aiming to be in that top 1,000. That is my goal. And I will go for Limitless this weekend. Lando Norris win. There you go.
Zach, any final thoughts for you?
Just again to repeat, thank you so much for coming on the show, Chris. It has been an honor.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you all for watching, and we'll see you on Saturday.
Take care.